Well, it's September and the kids are going back to school, and now it's the Ion Piscataway TV show here in September. And I want to welcome Mark McDonough from New Jersey American Water, the president of New Jersey American Water, to talk about the water company, what people don't do or do not know about the water company. But more importantly, we just had a minor little water break back on August 2nd in the town here. And things that still are taking place in order to remedy from the break. So, Mark, welcome to the first time on Ion Piscataway. And to my knowledge, this is the first time that we've had a president of one of the utility companies on the TV show. So
excellent.
I have the honor and a pleasure to have you on board. So before we get into asking a couple of questions about New Jersey American Water and your role within the company, why don't you just tell the residents a little bit of background about yourself personally, because I found it quite fascinating when you came out to the water main break. We were talking a little bit about our families and things like that, and that you're a retiree out of the U.S. Army, I believe.
Well, actually, I worked for the U.S. government as a special agent for about 10 years before I came into American Water. And
so when you were, if I remember, you were telling me that you were in charge of the facilities down in Fort Hood, Texas.
Sure. In the job I had just before this job, American Water has a military services group. And under a special DoD program, we operate 17 installations across the country, including West Point and Fort Hood, which of course is a major training base.
Well,
Texas.
Fort Hood, I believe, is the largest geographical Army base in the United States, from what I read. So it's not just like this little Army base. It happens to be probably the largest one in the country. So
and then for water utilities, particularly challenging because it has a lot of tanks.
Yeah.
So they have extra thick concrete in the roadway. So if you break a water line, it takes a lot to get through it.
Well, now that is interesting. Well, we don't have that problem in Piscataway, but for somebody that was in your position prior to coming to New Jersey American Water, that'd be a little challenging. You're dealing with Army personnel on a military base and taking care of the facilities. But I guess it's really no different than a lot of the challenges that we face here locally, delivering goods and services to township residents. And in your case, the goods and services are being delivered to the U.S. government military.
Absolutely. And a lot of people don't understand military bases. They've never been on one. They're essentially little cities. They're ring fenced. Of course, they have a mission. Some are very small, like West Point, which has the military academy on it. Some are huge, like Fort Hood or Fort Polk. There are some unique challenges. So, for instance, at Fort Polk, part of the area we had to take care of was in the firing range for their artillery. So we had to get permission before we went out there to make sure they weren't shooting.
That would seem sensible.
Day. But for the most part, it's very much the same. The garrison commander is much like a mayor, and they have their sort of citizens and customers that they worry about and take care of every day.
So that puts you in a great position to come on board with New Jersey American Water. So on August 2nd, we had for most people still know because Piscataway Road still shut down, a large water main break with one of your mains within the system. And you want to just explain, I guess by way of background, you might want to talk about where the water was coming from and where it was intended to go before the water main break.
Sure. So we have a major plant at Raritan Millstone, which is what we'll call a surface water plant that can produce up to 200 million gallons a day. And that services this county and actually 5 counties total in the central part of New Jersey. So we need to transport the water coming out of Raritan Millstone throughout the system, both to the west and to the east and north and south. So we use large transmission mains. And what was unique about the situation that we had with the main break on August 2nd was that there was a 24-inch main connected into both a 48-inch and a 60-inch main. Those mains being larger had more pressure in them to push the water along, if you will. So when that line failed, it of course caused a fairly large amount of water to discharge out of the system into that roadway there in Possum Town. So
I guess, for lack of a better word, not to go over your whole infrastructure facility that you're in charge of, but the facility out of across in Franklin, so to speak, that water is taken and cleaned up. It's actually out of the DNR Canal. Correct me if I'm wrong. And further
Yeah,
out.
we have the Raritan River and the DNR Canal. There are multiple sources for that for the water plant. We also have ground wells throughout the system to sort of supplement that water. So we have a number of different, but Raritan Millstone really, it's two plants right next to each other that are very large and serve most of this area.
So for storage purposes, does that get pumped up into one of the reservoirs?
Actually, no. Once we send it out of the plant, it goes throughout the transmission system, as we call it. We do have storage tanks placed throughout the system. The key to water systems is both maintaining bacteria-killing chlorine and to keep storage enough to keep pressure in the system so that all the houses, so when people open their tap, it comes out nice and crisp.
So that leads to the other question is, why were people asked to boil water?
Sure.
Now, most people, government officials know why, but for lay people, they're probably saying, well, I have a trickle of water, but it's not too bad.
Right.
But why do I still have to boil the water?
Right, because we produce so much water in this part of the state, we were able to have water running out even though there was loss. But pressure is really key to a water system. It maintains the integrity of the cleanness of the water. And if you can't certify to the state, you really have to ask people to boil their water. So when that pressure dropped because water was escaping out onto the roadway, we went to a mandatory boil water for 9 towns around the area. We asked our other 14 towns to start conserving, so they weren't drawing as much. What was really tremendous about what happened that day, and we're very proud of, within 8 hours, we were able to, despite the amount of water that had come out, we were able to stabilize the system and get the flow of water to almost every house again. Now, we can't immediately tell people you can start using the water. We have to make sure it's safe. But stabilizing it within 8 hours was a pretty big step.
That's the critical point. You were able to stabilize it, or do, lack of a better word, battlefield triage out
Sure.
there. You were able to stabilize it for the customers within the system.
Yeah, so the key to New Jersey American, and one of the great things about having us as your water company, is that we have a very interconnected system. So we're able to valve off the break. Now, it took us a while to get to the valves because of the amount of water. That's why 8 hours was.
I know. I was out there with
bit.
the engineers. They were all with their maps and trying to figure out,
Yeah.
all right, now here's the valve that where we have to move this one, that one.
There
So
were
it was very
several.
interesting seeing the operation going on,
Yeah.
trying to figure it out.
There were several underwater, so we had to find a way to get to those valves. But once we're able to sort of redirect the water, we're able to bring almost everybody back online because of the power of those large plants that we have to produce as much water as we need.
So the two lines, I learned a lot while I was out there during the water main break. I mean, I knew rudimentary about the water company, but I learned a lot. But along the railroad track, you have two very large mains, 160 and 148. And as you said, the 24 interconnector with line was one again.
Right.
When a pipe like that goes, and I think when I was talking to your resident engineers out there, I think that line, that 24-inch line, was probably maybe 50 or 60 years old.
Sure.
So water main breaks in general, the general public always hears about them, especially during the winter time. I guess because of changing of the temperatures and things like that. But in general, what really is the prime cause of water main breaks in general?
Sure. There's a number of factors that impact whether a line breaks. Particularly age of the pipe can be a big concern, so we try and track the age of our pipe, and as we recapitalize the system, we try to take care of those pipes, although there are pipes that will last 75 to 100 years with no issues. The other big part is the change in the makeup of the surface underneath, the subsurface conditions. So as you said, in wintertime, when you get a lot of heaving, you get ice and water moving in there, start shifting the land around. A few years ago at Fort Hood, when there was a big drought, we actually had some main breaks in the summer because the ground shrank.
Really? That's interesting.
So there can be a number of factors that can impact that. And of course, roadways, other utilities, things like that can also be impactful for why a main might break.
Because I'm no different than because the township of Piscataway maintains their own sewer lines, so we're in a different business than you are, but so to speak. But we sort of have some of the same challenges when certain lines break, that we have to go in in our case, we can't isolate, so to
Right.
speak, the sanitary, not like the water company or the gas company. So right there in that case. So what? So do you think? I know that the pipe has actually been replaced out there, and it's just a question of. I spoke with our township engineer this morning because I guess we're expecting to at some point get one lane of track in each direction opening up on the roadway
Sure.
until certain supplies come in that it could be finished though. But was this considered like an everyday break, or is this like a once in every decade type break?
I may not say that it's a once in a decade break, but it was a significant break in the type of roadway with the railroad track crossing so by. And this was also identified by us as a critical crossing. There's gas, there's sewer, as you mentioned, there's electrical, there's power to your customers or citizens in town. So there's a lot of factors happening under the ground. People sort of don't understand unless they see it.
You know what? To the folks in our viewership, you don't get a true picture of how critical that roadway is by that railroad trestle. As you just said,
Right.
that there's all this infrastructure that's out there. It all converges on that one point.
Sure. I mean, we had a fairly large break a week ago in Monmouth County, and we were able to repave that within 24 hours. This, of course, is going to take a considerable amount of time because it's a significant roadway. Currently, we're aiming for September 10th, as you said, to have that temporary roadway open. The other challenge is, of course, supply chains right now. It's just difficult to get all the things we need to do the road rehab the way the city really wants us to do it. So,
And that is no different when the logistics supply chain. For those folks, if you've ever had to order something online, now that there's a backlog of parts or whatever you may want, it doesn't come overnight now. It may take a couple of months to get.
yeah, I mean, the greatness of American Water is that we're the largest water company in North America, and New Jersey is the largest in this state. So we have a lot of flex to get materials, but sometimes you just can't, make things happen with the current conditions in terms of supply chain.
So while we're on that subject very quickly about, we just spoke about that you're expecting sometime around the second or third week of September. Hopefully we'll have the road opened up, at least one lane in each direction. The overall, the infrastructure, because I know we did speak a little bit about, when I did the prior interview with you about infrastructure as a whole. I know that now the House has passed a budget plan for infrastructure. I guess the negotiations need to go on between the conferees in the House and Senate over that, because I do know that we as Piscataway Township, some of the money that we are receiving from the federal government, we are going to be looking at areas where we need to tie off certain water lines to increase circulation within the community, which obviously your company is going to come into a big play in accomplishing that. But infrastructure in general nationally, speaking with your colleagues in the water business across the country, how critical is the upgrading a lot of this infrastructure?
Yeah, it's really huge. So we're excited for the infrastructure bill, but it's what we do every day. We spent about $2 million in Piscataway alone in the last 3 years, and we'll spend about $400 million in the state of New Jersey total this year. And New Jersey American is anticipated to spend about $1.5 billion. This is our own equity. This is our own money that we're putting in to about over the next 5 years, because there's just a constant need to recapitalize those systems. So we're hopeful that the money coming out of Washington will help other parts, but we're here at the ready, already doing sort of our job in terms of recapitalization of our infrastructure.
So I do know that for those folks that live on Netherwood Avenue, I do know that a part of the holdup, well, I wouldn't say holdup at this point, but obviously the project's not going to get finished this year, but now I guess New Jersey American Water is now going to replace a 70-year-old line the entire length of the street, which is a very long street. And that doesn't happen overnight. I mean, between ordering the material and lining up a subcontractor or contractors to do the work on behalf of New Jersey American Water. I believe that's an old 6-inch line that's out there. It's going to be upgraded probably to a standard 8-inch line out there for water pressure sake. But once that is complete, meaning your company completes it, I guess residents should see better quality water and water pressure.
Yeah, as a general rule, I mean, for the most part, it would be pretty seamless to the citizens. The water pressure might change a small amount. It'll really make it capable of being further developed if people want to do that. That job, I believe, is going to start in early 2022. And as you said, it's a big job. But we expect to have it done next year. It's about a $900,000 replacement.
So, water quality issues in general. What challenges do you see that are in the state of New Jersey?
Near constant, it feels like. So the first is that core recapitalization. We're a very densely packed state, highest per capita, and in terms of population for the size of us. So there's the challenge of getting that resiliency into the system, given the age of the systems that are out there. We have about 9,400 miles of water main in this state that we're responsible for.
That is a lot of miles.
That's a lot of miles.
Yeah.
And we're in constant, as I said, spending $400 million this year, $1.5 billion in the next 5 years. That's probably one of the key challenges. The second challenge is really New Jersey has been an industrial state. And so the emerging contaminants are constantly an issue for us to be addressing. We've been very successful at it, but it is always a challenge, and we are constantly vigilant. The I'm going to say this terribly wrong, not being a chemist, but the perfluorocarbons, PFCs, PFAS, PFOAs, which are referred to as the forever chemicals, coming off of like Teflon and a triple F fighter fighting foam.
Which has been talked about a lot more in the environmental news within the last year and a half.
That's probably right now the most immediate challenge that we see, along with, of course, the governor signing the lead service line legislation. Now, the good news for New Jersey American customers is that because of the nature of how we treat water, lead service lines, we are able to pass all of our requirements for lead and copper under federal rules. But we do want to get those lead service lines out of service. So even though they're not an immediate threat to our customers because of how we distribute the water, we have that project over the next 10 years to remove all the lead service lines per the governor's bill.
So basically, is that replacing all the mains but not the service connections?
Actually, with this, it'll be the service connections also. So when we normally would go down and not be responsible for the service lines running directly into the houses, we will undertake under the legislation Governor Murphy signed. We will replace those as part of the process replacing the main.
So I guess like in the more urbanized areas of the state, that's where you potentially have a lot of the lead lines.
Yeah, the older systems certainly are more vulnerable to having lead lines, but you find them in different places. And also we're removing galvanized lines because there's some connected risk to them in lead.
You don't hear much about that in the news about the galvanized lines.
You don't, and it's sort of a choice that was made by the legislature. We think a sound one as a water industry expert, but not every state is doing that.
Which is very interesting because they're not even talking about that on Capitol Hill.
Right.
About galvanized lines. You spoke a minute ago about the resiliency of the whole and the redundancy of the system. For our viewers out there and any other towns that are where you're watching from, what's critical about that is in order to attract business development within the community, we have to have a resiliency system because in our case in Piscataway, we have a lot of telecom companies that are housed here and they have a lot of cooling towers which require a lot of water. And that's one of the things when they look at about business location or relocation to this community is the availability of water and the expense of it because it is a major part. And they also look at the discharge end of going into how much does it cost to go into the town's sanitary sewer, which most people don't think about, but people that are in that business do, because of the cost. That is probably arguably one of the biggest stars that we have in this general area is the access of water resiliency in order to attract businesses to come to our community.
Yeah, and it's one of the benefits to a company of our size handling water systems, because we build in that redundancy and that additional capability to bring water. But you very much hit it on the head. We are the skeletal system upon which cities want to build if they want to grow. And we take great pride in that constant recapitalization that allows. One of the things, I sit on the board as an ambassador with Choose New Jersey, the organization that tries to woo international and domestic companies to come to New Jersey. And we're having talks with them to let them know, these are parts of the states like this service area right here that are capable of taking on that additional growth because the water system, the sewer systems are strong and have that capability.
And in our case, I just mentioned before about the data centers and the recovery sites that we have. They look at the redundancy of power too. So PSE&G, which is our service, our energy provider in this area, between the water, New Jersey American Water, and PSE&G, those are two critical utility components for Piscataway Township. Not just the residents, but also the corporate community here, in order to, as much as you want to have everything nice for your residents, but you also still have to maintain an affordability. So with having companies come in and move in and bringing jobs and things like that, that is a big portion of how it's a selling point for economic development within this area. And it's not just Piscataway, it's in the general Middlesex County area there, where your company plays a big role in that.
Sure. I mean, we really pride ourselves in not just being a member of the business community, but being a member of the community and thinking all about, smart development and being able to deliver good residential quality of life to our customers, as well as the ability for towns to grow smartly.
So what other things that should the great customers here in Piscataway or in your general system need to know about New Jersey American Water?
Sure. Well, New Jersey American Water is the largest water company in New Jersey. We serve about 2.8 million people.
That's about almost a third of the population.
Yes. 1 in every 3 citizens in New Jersey is a customer of ours. We most recently were awarded the J.D. Power Association #1 ranking for a large utility in the water industry. So we're very proud of that here in the Northeast. We serve up and down the state, statewide. And again, we really seek out to use our size to leverage to help our system. So our north system sits just above us here in this what we call our central region. So maybe
very quickly, the geographical boundaries of your north, central, and south.
Sure. So we are on the coast in Monmouth County, and then of course down in Atlantic County at Egg Harbor Township, and in some of Middle Township. We have our large Delran surface plant with the Delaware River, what we call our southwest operations, which surround Camden. We run actually a third of Camden's water system. So we're in Haddonfield and those areas. We're here in this, what we'll call our central region, Plainfield, Piscataway, and then we have our northern section, which is Short Hills. We also have operations out in Washington. So we're really dispersed throughout the state, and that geographic diversity and our size gives us the capability to help ourselves. I can bring to bear much more capability and personnel on an issue. And then in addition, American Water is centered in Camden, so I have the backbone of Big American Water, which is a nationwide, the largest water company in America, in North America. I can bring to bear all those PhDs and research people and engineers.
So there's a brain trust backbone that you can
back in Camden that I can rely on, which is really great.
So I remember growing up as a young adult in the 1980s, where there was a big drought here in the state of New Jersey.
Sure.
At that time, Governor Kane was governor, and there was legislation that was passed through a bond referendum where the state ponied up money for all the water companies in New Jersey to start interconnection loops with each other to be able to transfer water from one region of the state to another if there was ever drought. Now, I know I'm talking about a drought right now when remnants of Hurricane Ida is on the way up the coast. But with that being said, climate weather is funny. It changes with the seasons. You may have plenty of water one year and a drought next year. So with your colleagues, other water companies within the state of New Jersey, what role do you all play in trying to meld between working with the state to
Sure.
make sure that there's availability of clean water throughout the state for residents?
Sure. So New Jersey has a water authority that helps produce some of the water, but we take it upon ourselves, being the largest, to really ensure that we have that redundancy. New Jersey there are some sections of the state in the north in particular that can be prone to drought. So what we've tried to do is build in that capability to serve others. So for instance, we'll sell bulk water. And it's not always climate variation, although climate variation is going to be a big challenge and continue to be. I mentioned the emerging contaminants. Recently, Camden had to take a number of its wells offline, the city of Camden, the part we don't run. We were able to step in and supplement about half of their water take per day. So we stand there as a bulk water sales capable entity to really help support those smaller water systems, those municipal water systems that are not capable of sort of standing up on their own. That's really the challenge. So there's about 600 water systems in New Jersey.
That's incredible. There's 600 water systems. I mean, that includes municipal water systems too. And for those, in the viewership there are some municipalities that do operate and maintain their own water system, and they purchase water. Now, do any other municipalities purchase water off of your company?
We do. We have a number of municipalities we help supplement, Edison and others, where we sell water to them. And we were talking to a number because they need to have that capability. Not long ago, Trenton had a challenge with some of its maintenance, so we were able to open up an interconnect, much like with Camden. Camden will be a longer situation because they're really working on, with our help, building new treatment facilities. But yeah, it's a tremendous situation. We run 192 of those 600 systems. And because we're statewide and we're interconnected, we're able to bring a lot more capability.
So, as the mayor of Piscataway Township, I always find it fascinating. Walter Lynch, the CEO of the company, a longtime friend of Piscataway Township. I always said that I wanted to do a special show where water comes from, where it goes, and where it ends up. And from your place to the tap system in residence home, and then down to in our case, down to the Middlesex County Utilities Authority, where the wastewater is disposed of and treated. So I just find it fascinating because most people, when the pipes are underground, it's out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
They only know about it when there's a large water main break, such as it took place here in Piscataway. But all they know is that when they want to turn on the tap in their house or take a shower or do their laundry within their home or whatever, or in our case, and have it go out to a spray park at the community center, that's all they know. They just want to know they have safe water there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we don't want to be anonymous, but we mostly are because people just want to be able to open their taps. But to give you a sense of the water system and the watershed impact, we've been testing for a new contaminant called 1,4-dioxane down in the Delaware River. Our folks went out in the river literally taking the samples, the additional samples, because it's not fully regulated yet. And we discovered an increase, and we backed up to Pennsylvania, went back up and found the source. Now, we handed it off to the state entities to shut that source down.
So you saw where the problem was coming from, you turned it over to the DEP.
We said, you have to take action on these folks. And they did, luckily.
Well, that's working in tandem because, you obviously, I know through running our sanitary sewer system that certain companies pay more if they're discharging other hardening chemicals because we get billed, through monitoring stations, we get billed differently for those chemicals that are put in the system because then the MUA, the Utilities Authority down in Sayreville, has to treat that differently when it ultimately ends up there. And it's no different when you're going to purify water.
Yes, and we also run a number of wastewater systems at the state. It's smaller than our water footprint, so we have that understanding as you have, the capability if you have to run that system. We see ourselves as an environmental company. Not only do we want to keep our customers safe, but we want to keep the environment safe, and that's the wastewater piece of it.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, Mark McDonough, the president of New Jersey American Water, for stopping by on Piscataway. You were fortunate enough to spend a few more extra minutes with me during the water main break to come over and visit the community center because here again, New Jersey American Water played a role in seeing the community center be built because it's it's water. We're using a lot of water over there. So you got to see something to come to fruition there, what your company helped worked on. So
yes, very impressive. And we thank you very much for the opportunity. I enjoyed this very much.
Well, thank you for stopping by again. And for those who are, just remember, when you go to turn your tap on, it's coming from New Jersey American Water if you live here in Piscataway.
2 decades have passed since the 9/11 attacks, and terrorism remains a global threat. We may never be able to prevent all of the actions of people intent on harming others, but we do have control over how we respond to such events. Whether by volunteering in our local communities, serving our nation in the capital, caring for the sick and injured, or through our efforts, all of us can help build the world in which we want to live.
This event really has changed our lives. 20-year anniversaries give you a chance to regroup and rethink. So let me suggest that we do that. Let's regroup and rethink. And the rethinking is, let's not argue about any of these various issues, but let's find the common things that we can agree on. So let me throw them out there. Number one, everybody sitting here today can agree that we have to remember those who lost their lives in the various incidents around the country. And we also should do our very best to provide comfort to their survivors. Is that a principle we can all agree should be done? All right, number two, similarly, we need to recognize our first responders. And when you think about this, both police, fire, rescue, other groups and organizations, they really didn't know what they were going into.
Today, while some tried to break us, America stands tall, and America stands proud. Guided by the values that sustain us, it is these values and our combined strength that will only have us grow stronger. Generations from now, Americans will still build towers that reach to the heavens, still serve in embassies around the globe that stand for freedom, and still wear the uniform and give meaning to those words written 2 centuries ago: the land of the free, the home of the brave. Our challenges today must be to never let our spirit of unity be damaged, but rather rekindled for a renewed devotion of the rule of law and the mutual respect for all human life.
20 years has elapsed since that fateful day. Yet, to many, the pain is still deep. To all, the loss is always profound. Now among us are many young Americans who knew no time before 9/11, like many of the Troop 67 scouts. Our world changed that day. To those born after, they never knew a country that seemed safe from such an assault. But today, we are together. We mourn and we remember. Let us continue to stand together as one community and one country. Thank you, Exalted Ruler, and thank you, 2414 Lodge, for hosting this event again, as you do every year. Welcome to Piscataway! All right. You know, for short abbreviation, we dub it P-Way. For those folks that don't know, our town has been on the list of Money Magazine 4 times out of the last 10 years as one of the top 100 places to live in the United States and also to work.
Very good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to MX Logistics. It's hard to believe that we're here today. It felt like it was just yesterday we're getting our shoes dirty with the groundbreaking.
This has been a dream for my brother and I since we started this company over 34 years ago. We're just kids out of high school. We're 18 years old, turning 19. We didn't really know what we wanted to do with our lives, but we knew that we wanted someday to own our own business.
Again, my parents, if it wasn't for them, they wouldn't be here. They did a great job in raising us, giving us values. And I think we try to teach that to my kids. And I think that's the most, I don't think, that is to me the most important thing, is if I could accomplish giving my kids what my parents gave us, we're set.
This is reinventing an old industrial park here that was built in the late 70s and early 80s. And you have to be, as a government official, think out of the box. Where is the economy going? What's happening? What can you envision? Because things have forever changed. And I know I speak with my colleagues from around the country, other mayors and other planners, and everybody's trying to feel their way around in a pandemic economy. But everything keeps circling back to data and logistics, because everybody needs to eat, everybody needs to move someplace. So you are playing a role in this growing gig economy out there, and I want to thank you for being involved and locating here in Piscataway. That's one of the greatest decisions that you made.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome today. We have a beautiful day. It always seems like the sun shines on this day, and it is appropriate.
Today we are celebrating 75th Indian Independence Day.
I want to introduce our guest today, for Deepak Shah. He's a good supporter for the community and also the pharmacist, and he's really support every association in Middlesex County. So I want to say, Deepak bhai, say a few words. Coming here in this country for last 4 decades now, we have ability to support our country, to support our countrymen. You know how much of the sacrifice our people had done in 1940 and 47, that soldiers, so many people got killed. So all this sacrifice, what they did for our country, we have to pay back somewhere. So in our country here also, in America, we got to support our people who needs us. Basically, it's not just that our country means India or America. It's both the countries that we are in, and both of the countries we need. Then whenever we need them support, we have to do that.
Well, I want to welcome our PCT viewers back for another segment, and we're going to talk about infrastructure. And you're probably wondering, why is the mayor standing in front of SHI Stadium? Well, it's all about infrastructure. I have with me Mike McClelland from CME Engineering and our Director of Public Works, Gaspari. So for a number of years, we've had issues with sanitary sewers that we need to take care of. Now, most people, they don't care about the sanitary sewers. All they know is when they flush or run the sink or take a shower or run a dishwasher or the laundry, they don't care where it goes as long as it gets out of their house and out the way. They don't know where it ends up. All they know is they turn it on and it leaves their house. But here at Rutgers Stadium, we have a challenging issue. When you have a sellout stadium here, you have a mini season that's here at Piscataway. So the capacity is about 55,000 in this stadium. So typically, the big usage at Rutgers Stadium normally happens right before game times, because anybody who's been to a college football game, what happens? Most people want to go to the bathroom and then at halftime. So what that means to Piscataway Township is the wastewater goes someplace. And this is where Mike McClelland comes in. He's going to explain a little bit about the challenges that we have. And I know Mr. Gaspari, who's Director of Public, is going to talk about it. So Mike, you want to take it away?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. So what happens is that as the folks begin to use the facilities inside the stadium, we get what's called a peak discharge into the sewer downstream. And what's happened in the past is they've had issues with the downstream sewer being able to take it. So our proposed plan is to construct what's called an interceptor sewer, pick up the sewage as it comes past the stadium and direct it directly to the county's interceptor, which actually sits here in the park right in front of us here. So that's what the plan is. We need to put a pipe across River Road, down Sutphin, and ultimately into a meter chamber, which will discharge directly into the MCUA's interceptor.
Mr. Gaspari, do you have some comments there?
Well, as you said, when we do have these peak discharges, we get overflow. And what happens is, and it happened in the past, is some of the catch basins and I'm sorry, not catch basins, manholes start to overflow, and you can get effluent in the streets. So in the past, what we've done to avoid that, we've sent our crews during games to avoid that by sucking out the stuff as it's starting to overflow and taken to a different area. So that's costly, and we shouldn't have to be doing that. The system should work. And I think with this project, I think that'll remedy that problem, from here on.
Well, one of the things that I want to add in there is that when it does go, the university actually has three pumps. So for those people that have ever been inside the stadium, on the east side of the stadium, there's pumps at every I think every 400 or 500 feet. So it starts to pick up the wastewater from the east stands, then the north side, and then the west stands, where most people know the west stands park was like the home side, and then it pumps it out to our sanitary sewer system, and that's where we come in. Now, over the last couple months, there's been some public back and forth on Facebook. Why is the town going and acquiring a piece of property on River Road? The simple answer is, we had to go in and condemn the property to acquire it in order to run the sanitary sewer in, which is for a public purpose. But more importantly, that's where the meter chamber is going to be, because you can't have a meter chamber in the park. And so that's why we go in. There's been much discussion out there in Facebook world about a house being taken. Well, the truth of the matter is, it was basically a rental property that was an illegal rooming house. But that's a whole nother issue that's being dealt with in the courts. The bottom line is, we as the township officials, since we are the purveyors of the sanitary sewer system here in this DEP mapping area, we're responsible for sewage in order to get it safely down to the Middlesex County Utilities Authority in Sayreville. And that's all three, basically, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, your company deals directly in a lot of these issues. That is the responsibility of communities when they're in charge of a sewer mapping area.
That's correct. You have to convey it to their system, and then ultimately they treat it for you.
And just to emphasize, Mayor, is we're not taking the property. We give them fair market value.
That is absolutely
so it's not like we just took it away from them.
Well, instead of being an engineer, you should have been an attorney, Mr. Gaspari. But the thing is that this interceptor system that we're designing is not going to just pick up the stadium. It's all the future development that they're going to do surrounding here. So over the last several years, Rutgers University has been expanding their facilities, athletic facilities, and buildings, and all that calculation adds up to go into the sanitary sewer system. And as Mr. Mike McClelland from CME Engineering had said previously, the last thing you do is you want to have raw sewage spilling out onto the streets, and patrons of the stadium having to walk through raw sewage. It's not a good optics. It's never a good optics, and it's a bad thing to happen. So if we can avoid it by having correcting measures out there, that's what government is supposed to do. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gaspari?
Yes.
So
exactly.
That is what we're doing out here in front of SHI Stadium. I guess we're fortunate enough, this is 2 days, 48 hours after the large Hurricane Ida rainstorm. Had we been filming this a day ago, we've probably been filming it in a boat out here, because as you can see, most of the damage and debris that has come up on River Road, they were just getting ready to open up River Road
but we're dealing with a lot of damage around the town, and we're actually going to go around and film a little later. But infrastructure, the sanitary sewer systems, a lot of people don't realize in big storms like this, it becomes, no matter how good of a sewer system you have, they do get taxed with overburden because people have a tendency to discharge their sump pumps into the sanitary, which creates a capacity issue. And Mr. McClelland, you could probably talk about why that's never a good thing to discharge sump pumps.
So what happens is the lines are designed for waste, sanitary waste, not for storm drain. And unfortunately, a lot of folks all over the county, all over the state of New Jersey, do basically a similar thing. And basically that is to tie their floor drains and their sump pumps into the sanitary sewer, which is really discouraged. Some towns it's not even permitted by the ordinances. So, and those peaks then add into the treatment for the sewer. And that's why it becomes such a problem. So if you design your wastewater plant to handle 10 million gallons a day and all of a sudden you're getting 20 and most of that's clear water, storm drain, it becomes a taxing thing for the wastewater plants and for your piping system. So it's discouraged, and as I said, in some towns there's even an ordinance that says you're not supposed to do it.
See, then at the Middlesex County MUA, the Utilities Authority down in Sayreville, they handle, I think that their area covers almost 1.5 million people, which is a lot.
Right. And people outside the county also.
Yeah, that's correct. So that's why we always encourage, when we have to do infrastructure upgrades with underground, as Mr. Gaspari knows, a lot of it, unfortunately, has to do because the people have illegal tie-ups at their homes or businesses, which is not calculated into capacity.
Right.
And so that's unfortunately the drawbacks that municipal officials, county officials, state officials, and outside consulting engineering firms have to figure that out to provide a safe way for wastewater to get to be treated there, because the last thing people want to see is having that back up on their properties or in their homes or businesses, etc.
So and just to back up on that, it's also an economics issue, because every gallon that goes to the Middlesex County Utilities Authority, we pay for it.
That's right.
So these are gallons that are not measured by us because they don't go through their meters, so we don't charge for them. So what happens in that situation is, as we get an increased flow into the Utilities Authority and the cost is up higher to us, we have to kind of up the cost to everybody else to make up for it, so that we're not at a loss. And that's why it becomes an economics issue, so that the infiltration and inflow of stormwater into our sanitary sewer system is a problem, and we'd like to remedy every drop that goes into the system.
That's right.
So
every gallon of clear water we could prevent going into the wastewater system is money that the taxpayers and ratepayers are going to save. That's the bottom line. That's the easiest way to explain it. Don't discharge clear water into the sanitary sewer system, because ultimately at the end of the day you're going to be paying higher rates. That's the bottom line. So so I want to thank, unless you two gentlemen have anything to close out with.
We're good.
We're fine, Mayor.
We're going to go back to studio and talk about some other things that happen in the month of September and August. So we'll see you back in the studio. I hope you enjoyed our guests in the month of September, the President of New Jersey American Water, as well as Mike McClelland from CME Engineering, and our Director of Public Works, Guy Gaspari. Please enjoy the outtake of the fireworks, and also remember that school is back in session. Be cognizant while driving around town. We'll see you in October.